The last video was an invitation to silence. It was realizing that you are the silence, that there's no need to silence the mind. Simply realize that you are the silence. Now, consider that an initiation or an invitation. And what may happen is you may experience the mind become very noisy after. And this is to try and distract you from what you are. You simply remain as the silence that you are. And to realize that actually the mind, the noise of the mind, is not in conflict with the silence that you are. It doesn't need to be this or that. That actually there can be harmony. It doesn't need to be one or the other. You don't need to have no thoughts over thoughts. It's just what was happening before is you only knew the thoughts. You only knew the sound. And then I pointed out to you that there's actually way more silence than there is sound. It's everywhere. Everything is made of it. That's why when you are simply attending the silence that you are, it feels like everything goes silent. People, cars, pets, animals, nature. When you touch the silence in yourself, when you are simply resting as that silence, when you're attending the silence that you are, it's like everything goes silent. Because that silence is the source of everything. If you haven't watched the previous video, then I invite you to watch that. This may make some more sense after watching it. But when you're simply resting as that silence, when you know yourself as that silence, when you're experiencing that every thought is arising out of you, the silence. Every thought is experienced within you, the silence. Every thought dissolves back into you, the silence. Then you're no longer in conflict with the thoughts. You're no longer in conflict with the thoughts. And the silence that you're experiencing, it feels as if the outer, the apparent outer, there's not really an outer, but the outer experience becomes silent. When you're resting as your true nature, because silence is the source of everything, then the experience is that everything is silent. Because everything is permeated by this silence. Everything is made of this silence. Everything is arising out of this silence. This silence is actually everywhere. So you're no longer trying to create conditions for silence like you once were. You are no longer waiting for your family to not be home for you to meditate. You are no longer needing headphones in order to meditate. That you could be at a train station or at the airport or at a baseball game, and you can experience the silence. And that this silence is not dependent on there being no sound. That is actually a myth. It's a misunderstanding. It's a misconception of what silence is. That silence is not the absence of sound. Silence is ever present. It doesn't appear when there's no sound. It's not like it takes the place of the sound when there's no sound. Oh, there's silence that shows up. No, it's here right now. And simply resting as that silence, you notice that that's actually where these words are coming from. These words are made of silence. These sounds that are coming out of my mouth are actually made of silence. So I give you some pauses in between. So if you follow the words, you follow the words back into the silence. When I leave a purposeful gap in between my words, I leave you hanging in silence. When you're waiting for the next word to come out of my mouth, you're waiting in silence, watching the next word arise. And by simply being aware of that silence, you find yourself as it. That it's only silence that knows silence. It's only silence that hears silence. The silence that is speaking these words is the same silence that's listening to the words. The silence that's speaking the sounds is the same silence that's hearing the sounds. So if you experience yourself as that silence in the last video, consider it like an introduction. Consider it an introduction to your true self, that you are the silence. And what you may experience after is that the mind becomes very noisy. Could have the opposite, where the mind seems to shut up. And that's if you just simply rest as yourself. It's not like this swapping happens, where the mind is swapped with the silence. It's just simply the attention not being so fixated on the sounds, that the attention is not attending the sounds exclusively. That's what's happening. Is that the attention is so focused on the thoughts, the sounds, that it's excluding everything else. And after that video, you go, how was it? How was I excluding the silence? It's everywhere. It's before, during, and after the sound. But you were. Now, after realizing that you are the silence, you're noticing that the silence is all-inclusive. There's no need to exclude. So likewise, you don't exclude the thoughts. That's actually the problem with trying to silence the mind, is you're trying to exclude the sounds. But what you are is all-inclusive. What you are is the silence. The silence has made room for the sounds. So likewise, by realizing that you are this greater space of silence that the sounds are appearing in, there's plenty of space for the sounds. There's plenty of room for the sounds to appear in you. There's no need to exclude. And this is the harmony of the silence and sounds. That the sound is actually the activity of silence. The silence is sound at rest. So there's no need to exclude. There's no need to set up conditions. How do I get back to that silence? I must use headphones and soundproof my room and tell my family to go out of town. It's not like that. Just simply relax. And it's just simply about attending to the silence that you are. That silence is actually always available. Right now, I'm enjoying the silence that I am, even in the midst of speaking. So it's not one or the other. It's not this or that. It's this and that. This is non-duality. This is the inclusion, the wholeness, the completeness. That what was appearing to be opposites are actually complementary. What you were trying to swap. I want to swap the sounds for the silence. It's as if there's just one stick and all you knew was one end of the stick, the sound, and you're following it to the other end. Oh, the silence. So they're complementary. It only appeared to be opposite. You were only focused on one end of the stick. You didn't know the other end. And now that you know the other end, well, you realize that you're the stick, that you are both the silence and the sound, not two. This is the wholeness. And realizing this wholeness, there's harmony. Hopefully this helps. I'll see you in the next one.